G'day, welcome to Cuba de Rio. I'm Matt Scolle. At the top there, the fabulous whiny voice of a fruit seller in Cartagena. Just gorgeous. And what we're listening to now is some awesome Caribbean beats that I encountered on Johnny K. So this week, we've got the last of the Caribbean islands of Colombia to do, San Andreas. And then that's followed by an absolute whirlwind tour of Colombia. We hit Cartagena before gunning it south to Bogota, and yeah, that's essentially it. And so yeah, stick around, listen, it's a good one. I enjoyed putting this one together, and there's a few some noises you won't hear on too many other podcasts than this.
San Andreas couldn't be any more different from Providencia. It's like a super chill Creole Ned Flanders next to crazy methed up Homer Simpson. Like, these neighbors are completely incompatible. Like, in addition to having 20 times the population on the same sized island, San Andreas is also it's got the highest, I reckon, in all of my travels, it's got the second highest density of motorcycles I've ever seen, comparable with Hanoi in Vietnam, and that is a shit ton. But it's just crazy. It looks like it's trying to mimic a postcard it saw of Miami in the 1970s. There's low-rise buildings everywhere in the town centre, and it's just, I don't know. It is a pretty amazing island. It's very small. It's easy to get around. There's buses and the like, and it's absolutely nothing like that in Providencia. Providencia really is tough when it comes to transport situations. You've either got motor taxis, which are quite expensive, or hitchhiking, and you're guaranteed to have a fantastic conversation with your driver if you hitchhike. So that's what I would suggest if you ever get up to this remote corner of the world.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Initial top. So we have Chris Bob, Andre of France, doing a pre-immersion dive, 51 meters, 2 minutes, 10 seconds.
Today I spent the day with mermaids. Freediving is unlike any other extreme sport I've ever seen. Firstly, because it's got no Red Bull sponsorships plastered everywhere, but secondly, because it is a thoroughly mental extreme sport. The athletes before their dives are all lying around on the pontoon just trying to get into their headspace, visualizing the depth that they're going to get to, hand over hand down the rope, or whether they're using their big monofins or anything. It's just incredible to watch these people prepare themselves for the huge physical task ahead of them, because down at those depths, things happen to your body. You can't breathe because the air inside your lungs shrinks in size, and so to equalize their ears, they have to hold air in their mouth and use just that air in their mouth to equalize their ears at those lower depths, especially beyond 30 meters, because at 30 meters that is the point at which you can no longer bring air from your lungs up into your mouth to equalize your ears. These people are the most incredible athletes, and I am so lucky that I was on the bus at the right time yesterday when I met one of them, Diego from Chile. This competition's got 17 athletes from 11 different countries, and I just had the greatest day spending time around these people, because they all know themselves so well from doing this sport, and they're all there's such an amazing array of skill here. There's people that started just a few months ago and found out they're very good at it, all the way through to pros that can go down to 116 meters, like a Tanzanian competitor that's here. It is an incredible mix of people. Diving in San Andreas was like nothing else. It was crazy. We got to do cave diving, in which we went through this 12 meter long cave, and then we shot up through a hole in the top throughout the coral, and then when we looked around behind us, all our bubbles that had collected on the roof of the cave were finding these minute little tunnels through the coral back up to the surface, and we had this forest of bubbles behind us after doing this dive. It was just amazing, and the coral and the fish in San Andreas were comparable to Providencia. However, sadly, no sharks this time because it was a bigger population centre. But still, absolutely amazing experience. And a day after my birthday, so well worth it.
Señoras y señores, hemos llegado a la ciudad de Cartagena, Río Colombia y esta tripulación. Ha sido un gusto tenerlos a bordo en la noche de hoy.
I'm wandering along a structure you would usually associate with China or one of the European fortress cities, but Cartagena is indeed a walled city. It was established in 1533 by the Spaniards. This was their first city on the South American continent, and it was from here that all the gold that they took out of Peru and out of South America came through Cartagena on its way across the Caribbean. And the city is walled because that quantity of gold attracted pirates, and it was subject to a number of raids throughout its lifetime. So yeah, this is Cartagena. It's gorgeous, I must say. Like as my first stop in continental Colombia, it delivers 100%. It's within the walls is this perfect tourist haven where the tourists are inside and the rest of Cartagena is outside, and the tourists absolutely love it. There's street sellers everywhere. All the prices are inflated, but we don't care. There's walls between us and the rest of the world, and that's the thing with the walled city. It doesn't matter if there's actually danger outside. All you know is that there's walls and you're protected from whatever's there. But I feel great. This is a good city. I'm welcoming the return of fresh fruit. I didn't realise its absence after a week on 2 islands. But there wasn't a lot of fruit on either Providencia or San Andreas. And so arriving here and wandering into a supermarket and suddenly having a whole aisle dedicated to the stuff again, wow, brilliant. And so this morning I had like avocado and a street vendor's cheese on some fresh warm bread. This is how good life can be in a tourist city. And then on top of that I had this passion fruit that was as big as my 2 fists put together. It was incredible. It's so tasty. And then the street sellers around here know exactly what you need. And so my morning has just been me wandering around, sampling all the goods. There's fantastic sort of lemonade vendors who are selling this ice cold lemonade, and they squeeze about 5 full limes into the bottom of your cup, so it's tangy as all hell. I might have another one of those actually. It's delightful. And I had some gelato, and it's just such a nice place. I'm enjoying itself. I also ran into a school friend who's living in my hostel, and I didn't even know he was travelling South America. Berenger, shout out to Berenger, he's here. So I didn't have any slightest clue he was in South America. So yeah, hopefully we'll catch up with him later on to see what he's been up to. But how bizarre is that? Anyway, so Cartagena is delivering both on the tourist front and on the surprise front. So yeah, I'm pleased. I'm loving it.
We're in Cartagena's Gold Museum, and the thing that's caught my eye here, apart from it being free, is these things called tejidos de oro. Tejidos de oro, which mean gold weaves. And what these things were these delicate little, they looked like sort of wire cobwebs that served as earrings and ornamental garments for the indigenous that made them. And I just watched a video on how they're made, and they're still artisanal people that can make these things. So how they make it is they form out of beeswax the mold that they want the earring to take shape, and so they'll make this intricate little pattern of cross-hatching and the like out of beeswax, and then seal that in clay, and then bake the clay. And in baking the clay you get a clay mold, and you can also pour out the beeswax once it's melted. And so once that's done, your clay thing cools down, and then you pour in the gold or gold and copper mix that you want to make your earring out of, and then that can then you can break the mold of clay, and you got this perfect little ornament. They are so gorgeous, and it's such an ingenious way of making these things. I just loved it.
If you've ever wondered what angry ice cream vendors sound like, that's it. These guys are out the front of the governmental municipal office and protesting. There's about 12 ice cream vendors with their ice cream coolers in front of them, ringing their bells in anger. And yeah, It's one of the most hilarious protests I've ever seen. But it looks like, from what their cards are saying, that they're looking like their licenses are going to be taken off them. So they will lose their livelihoods. So they are protesting with a reason. But man, oh my god. Needless to say, the mood out here is a little frosty. Emerald grinding, because here's a fact, Colombia produces 60% of the world's emeralds, and right next door to the Museum of Gold is the Museum of Emeralds. But let's just say they're not as serious about the museum part as the Museum of Gold is. More than half this place is a shop, and the dioramas that they have got are pretty shoddy in that one of them includes a number of figurines from Disney's planes and a bunch of sort of soldiers dressed up as miners. So yeah, they don't really try here. And when they included Australia in their map of the world of emerald production, they highlighted only 3 cities in Australia: Sydney, Adelaide, and then McPhee's Patch somewhere in the middle of the Northern Territory, which I did not know existed. So that's the worldview the Colombians have of us. Doing the Cartagena free tour, and there's 2 of these every day, one at 1 and one at 3, and the 3 one's very popular because it is an extremely hot city to walk around. But the guide, Edgar, is absolutely fantastic, and I do feel rather terrible for spending my last pesos of the day on postage stamps rather than this guy's tip, because he is a fabulous just fountain of knowledge. And so we've wandered around all the different plazas of Cartagena, and he knows the history of absolutely everything around them. But I'm fascinated with the history of Cartagena and its resistance culture, in that it's a walled city and it's been used to keep things in and others out. So back in 1811, the Colombians got their independence, but a few years later the Spanish decided to retake it in 1818, and the Cartagena was besieged for over 105 days, in which 6,000 people died of starvation. And once the Spanish general that was in charge of the invasion got in town, he lined up the heroes of Cartagena that effectively led the resistance for those 105 days and shot them against the wall of the church here in town. And so later on in 1821, I believe, it was when Simon Bolivar was at his peak of his power, and he had 20,000 troops behind him, and he came from Caracas, where he was born in Venezuela, and decided to unite Colombia against the Spanish in Cartagena. And so he got to Cartagena with his 20,000 men against the 15,000 men of the Spanish general in Cartagena, and they had all bailed. They were terrified to face this Simon Bolivar, and he went on to then unify Cartagena, Colombia, Venezuela, Panama at the time as well, if you remember, as part of Colombia, and then Ecuador. And so they all share the colours yellow, blue, and red in their flags. Yellow for the gold that was found in these lands, blue for the sea that surrounds them, and red for the blood that was spilt protecting them. So it's been absolutely brilliant. So I highly recommend you come and do the walking tour here in Cartagena, and apparently there's an excellent one in Medellin as well, but we will miss that entirely. The Copa America has kicked off while I've been here in Colombia, and I was meaning to mention it in San Andreas because the first Colombian game was celebrated on my birthday there on the 3rd of June. That was Colombia versus the United States, and they absolutely gave them a walloping. But tonight is Colombia versus Paraguay, and we're all sat outside here in Cartagena, and the best thing happens in Colombia just before the game. For the entire afternoon before the game, every single Colombian puts on their Colombian team jersey. It's incredible. So the entire streets are just awash with yellow. It's so beautiful. I don't know where the patriotism stops and the peer pressure begins with this cultural trait, but it's just brilliant.
llegado a la ciudad de Bogotá. Para Colombia, en especial para esta tripulación, ha sido un gusto tenerlos a bordo en el día de hoy.
Yes, I flew again. Flying is indeed the cheapest and most effective way of getting around Colombia. I bought a $23 ticket between Cartagena and Bogota, and my other option would have been a $45 bus that took 20 hours between the 2 points. So instead I got here in time for my second ever free walking tour. And this time I had the sense to actually take money to tip these people because they do an amazing job. And the one in Bogota here, there's many. They're all out trying to outcompete each other. Don't know how you can when they're free, but anyway. There's a free graffiti tour, there's a free history tour, and that's the one that I did. And these two students run it. They're both fine arts students. And so there was a particular political lean to everything that they said and all the places they took us to. But the Candelabria, which is where I'm staying, is right up against the mountain range that runs along the back, the sort of spine of Bogota here. And all the buildings and everything are pressed up to a point at which they can't build on the ground because it just gets too steep from here on. So it's very reminiscent actually of Queenstown in New Zealand, because you've got the town and then just those pine-covered mountains right behind it. There's even a gondola here to an expensive lookout place, which I have forgone. Instead, I've wandered up a road and I've got the most perfect view of a sunset over Bogota. You will see the pictures on the Facebook page. It is gorgeous. But anyway, the Candelabria is the political sort of crux of Colombia. It's got everything. It's got the presidential palace, it's got Congress, it's got the Senate, it's got the Palace of Justice. Those of you that have seen Narcos will recall that there's a question of whether Pablo Escobar incited the M19 communist rebels to attack the Justice Palace in 1985, in which they held a bunch of hostages, 350 of them, and essentially burnt the evidence archives of the Palace of Justice. So that's where the Pablo Escobar link comes in, because apparently all his documentation was held in the Palace of Justice. And so the M19 rebels went in, they held the hostages, they destroyed the documentation, and then the Colombian state had an obscene overreach in which they sent in the army and destroyed the Palace of Justice and effectively killed everyone in there. And those, including the innocents that were just working their jobs there, were killed by the tanks and the infantry that went in. And if they escaped, then they were tortured as suspected M19 rebels in a house that's very nearby and overlooks the Plaza of Bolivar. So no, there's a lot of history around this part of Colombia. And yeah, my hostel's on a plaza that was the first ever plaza in Bogota, and the Spanish chose it as that was the place where the indigenous people here of Bogota had their meeting place. And the reason the Spanish came here to Bogota to usurp the indigenous people was because the indigenous here had control over the salt mines. And those of you that have listened closely will recall that I've been reading a book recently on the history of salt and the way it's affected our progress as humanity. And this is one of those examples. We have a capital city of 8.8 million people on the ground which a salt trading indigenous tribe had their place. So yeah, it's crucial stuff, this salt. And Bogota is just absolutely gorgeous, and it's so cold. I've been wandering around in t-shirt and shorts just to experience the cold all day, because I have been hot and sweaty for 4.5 months, and I'm done with that. I'm loving not stinking. That's great. Anyway, so Bogota, really worthwhile, and I'm making the most of my day and a half here, that is for sure. As expected, Bogota's Gold Museum is way more well-funded than the one in Cartagena, and it has incredible interactive exhibits like the one I'm standing in now, which is audio and visual description of a shamanic ceremony where they heaved a bunch of gold into the lake, and that's why it was so easy to find as many pieces and the variety of pieces as they have, because
the indigenous people kept taking like generations of gold worth to these lakes and just popping them in the middle, and it made life for archaeologists very easy. But anyway, there's been quite a bit of information that I can expand on now from our little jaunt through the Cartagena one, and still I'm obsessed with this method of the disappearing wax mold method. And an interesting addition to that story is that here in Bogota, the pieces are so much larger, and the wax that they would have been using was so much bigger that you can actually make out the fingerprints of those that formed the wax molds on the gold itself. And so that led the Spanish to believe that the metallurgists here in Bogota were actually working molten gold with their own fingers, and that's a nice little story that I found quite hilarious. Similarly, different metallurgic techniques that they used here are so much more diverse in the examples you can see in the exhibitions here. My favourite being the way that these indigenous tribes in the Andean regions would mix different herbal concoctions and make acids and scar their copper gold mixes, and they would protect parts of the gold plate, for example, with resin, and then basically burn away these shapes and forms into these gold plates. And so just brilliant effect. They are so pretty with these different shades of golds and browns in them. It's these people were utter geniuses, and it was a great disappointment that their cultures were largely destroyed in the Spanish conquest of South America. It's my museum day in Bogota, and in addition to the Museum of Gold, Bogota has an entire sort of district dedicated to multiple museums, both art and history. So the history one includes the Museum of the Coins, which is in the old exchange house here in Bogota, and that discusses the development of trade and the different minting processes throughout all the Spanish colonies in South America. It's thoroughly interesting and a lot of detail. So get down here and do it for yourself, because there's no way I could summarize it properly in this podcast. But the other side of things is Bogota seems to be this this hub for just cultural pieces, and so there's this awesome museum called the Botero Museum, which is just an art museum that is focused around the work of Botero, who is a Colombian artist from the 20th century, died just before the turn of the millennium, I believe. But yeah, he had been painting from the 1930s through to then, and his style is to paint normal people but as fat. So he's done a famous picture of the Mona Lisa just as a sort of fat little smiling woman, and there's all these brilliant pictures of fatties in their daily lives on fat horses with fat cats and dogs around them. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's the sort of art that appeals to me. And then in addition to that, they've just got this mad collection of actual famous artists. So there were pieces by Monet and Francis Bacon, the artist, not the father of scientific philosophy, but also Picasso. And I must say, I was thoroughly disappointed in Picasso because I sort of spotted the wonky-shaped eyes, and I was like, I've seen that before. This shitty sketch, I don't know, one of the thousands of pieces of art he must have done, but yeah, there was 2 pieces of Picasso in there, and yeah, they did not deliver like Botero did, that is for sure. The Transmilenio. Basically, Bogota has come up with an ingenious way of using what infrastructure they have to produce a public transport network. It's basically they closed down several of their major roads in the centre lanes and have put stations and these double articulated bendy buses. If you thought bendy buses were bad, these things are about 120 metres long with 2 bendy bits in them. They're crazy. They take forever to go around tight corners, I tell you. But these it's just the most beautiful integrated system because you've got these two lines of buses, both dual lanes to allow the slower buses to stay on the inside edge, and then the rapid transit ones to go on the outside. But then in the middle of these two bus lanes, often you'll find a cycle path. And Bogota's got a brilliant system when it comes to cycle, and that I think a lot of their main roads are closed on Sundays. And it's got a name. It's like the Cycle Tasso or something of that nature. But bikes just come out of everywhere, and it's gorgeous. It's the way a city of 8 million people should work. How good is the fact that I got to do that diving noise in there? Basically, I took my camera down and then just spliced the audio out of the video that I took while I was down there. So yeah, now we can podcast above and below water. Genius. Anyway, the music you're listening to, by the way, is from Johnny K in San Andreas. It's the most touristy part of San Andreas, and to be honest, I didn't like it all that much. It's basically an island with a 1.5 kilometer diameter, surrounded by coral. But the coral's in pretty bad nick because there's a lot of tourists there, and there's just crowds of people on the beach. But that did mean that there were these awesome guys playing the music that you're listening to now. So yeah, worthwhile in the end. This interview, by the way, is with an athlete. It's with one of the divers that I met, and yeah, she was pretty incredible. And I'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Mandy Sumner, and I'm from Hawaii, United States.
And what brings you to San Andreas?
I'm in San Andreas right now for the Nirvana Ocean Quest Freediving World Cup 2016 freediving competition.
And how do you get into such an incredible sport like this one?
For me, it was by accident. I was a competitive swimmer my whole life, and then I was just with a couple friends that were freediving, and I wanted to try it. And in my first dive, they kind of taught me a little bit. They gave me a briefing on what to do, and one of them was a freedive instructor. So my very first dive, I went to 110 feet US, so 32 meters.
Jesus.
Down to the deck of a boat that I used to scuba dive on. So. On a wreck.
Wow.
So yeah, when I came up, they were just like, yeah, you should probably take some classes, and then ever since then, just because I've been a competitor or an athlete my whole life, I just learned that you could compete in this, and so I started competing about a month after I started freediving, and I've been doing it for 2 years now.
All right, so tell me about last season, because you did some crazy tour throughout.
Yeah. Last season was really good. I was working full-time as a geologist, and then I left my career in August, and literally 2 days before I left for Cyprus for World Championships, individual World Championships. And I performed in Cyprus for the World Championships as an individual for the U.S., and I did constant weight dive and no fins dive, and I ended up getting gold medal, first gold medal for the U.S. ever in history for freediving. So I got the gold medal and became world champion in no fins with a dive to 58 meters. And I think my constant weight was a personal best. It was 66, I think. But then after that, I was supposed to go home, but I ended up going to Greece because I met some of the Greek divers, and they were like, oh, we're having a competition next weekend. So I was like, okay, might as well. So I went to Greece, and I did really good there. I got 2 silvers, and then I went to Egypt, to Dahab, to triple depth competition, and I trained there for 3 weeks with my no fins coach.
Yeah. What does a triple depth mean?
Triple depth was you have to do everything in a certain order to be able to win or to be in the competition. So the first day was free immersion, I think. The second day was constant weight, and the last day was no fins, which is difficult. 3 days, like doing no fins at the end of a competition.
Especially being your third competition in less than a month, probably.
Right. So I did a 51 meter no fins dive at that one, and that was just it was difficult because I was tired. But that was a good competition. It was really fun. We did it in Blue Hole in Dahab, and I won that competition, and then I went to Mexico. Actually, I went to Miami first to meet up with a friend, and then we both flew down to Mexico.
Yeah.
To La Paz, and that was a really nice competition, but at that point I did just a couple dives, and then I kind of just was there for fun after that because I was exhausted. So I went and played with whale sharks and sea lions and dove with all those, and it was great. Yeah.
Well, two things there, because we're headed to the Rio Olympics on the podcast.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You're the first gold medalist we've spoken to.
Yep.
I managed to bump into a bronze medalist from the 1968 Mexican Games back in Mexico.
Awesome, yeah.
So, we're slowly accumulating some sports credentials here.
Yeah.
But could you give us an overview of the different classes within the sport? Because I'm surprised at how formalized it is into all its different...
The disciplines, you mean?
Okay, yeah.
Is that what you mean? Like what we did out here?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you have a depth competition, you have 3 disciplines that you can do. You have constant weight with a fin, and so that's what you see everybody. You can't touch the line, and you can touch once at the bottom when you grab your tag, but you have a fin on. And then you have constant weight, no fins, and that's pretty much like breaststroke, down and back, no touching the line. And then you have free immersion. And free immersion is the one that you pull down the line.
And that's the one that's
up.
getting the really huge records, isn't it? Yeah.
Free immersion, and then William Trubridge is doing some pretty deep records, over 100 meters in no fins. And I mean, all the world records are over 100. But yes, everybody is really pushing the free immersion right now.
Yeah, and give us an idea of this competition, like what sort of class of athlete is here?
This competition's really good because you have people like Waleed that are here that are national record. He's going for national record, and he's a deep diver. He did his PB, his personal best dive the other day. I think it was like 116 or something, or 18.
Oh my God!
Yeah, but then you have a whole bunch of new divers here too that have never been in a competition, and they're just starting. So it's really it's a big spectrum, but it's really great that there's so many people here that are just trying, just getting into freediving.
Yeah.
So. And
you really have to do something special to get a record in this sport, because it seems like they just fall continually.
Right. They do. It depends on what country, and everybody's always battling. It's good when you have a new country that's entering, because then you can just like get all the all the national records at once, and then keep pushing them up. In the U.S., we have some of our national records were actually world records at one point. So. They're pretty deep. And then Waleed, he did get a national record in Sweden, Balu.
For which country is he representing?
Tanzania.
You nearly slipped into the Donald Trump pronunciation there. Tanzania.
Yeah. And then Balu is from Argentina.
All right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's from Argentina. And she got a national record yesterday on her very first dive in her first competition, so that was good.
Yeah. I think she went again today, but she got caught up on the protocol.
Yeah.
So when you come to the surface, give us an idea
of
what
when
you
you come to the surface, you have 15 seconds to look at the judge, take off whatever's on your face, like a mask or a nose clip. You have to remove all your facial gear. You have to give an okay sign, and then you have to say, "I'm okay" in English. And it's written in the rules that you have to say it in English. And you have to do those separate. You can't do everything all at once, and you have to do it in that order. And if you don't do it in that order, then you get disqualified. And you have 15 seconds to do that.
So the difference between a red, yellow, and white card, what are they?
A white card means that you had a good dive. You grabbed the tag at the bottom. You came up with the tag. You came up with your lanyard. You came up with your weights, everything. You did your surface protocol within 15 seconds, and you get a white card. It can change sometimes because they have a bottom camera.
Okay.
And you're not supposed to touch the line. So if they see on the camera that you're touching the line more than once, then you get a penalty, and then it could possibly turn into a yellow card after. The yellow card is for penalties if you start early, if you start late, if you come up without your lanyard, like if you get tangled and you have to take you have to release your lanyard. If you don't complete your dive and you turn early, you get a yellow card, and then you get points for only the depth that you've done. And then a red card is, you get a red card if you mess up your surface protocol, if you do your surface protocol over 15 seconds, or if you black out. So that's another red card too. Yeah,
that's a kick in the guts.
Yeah.
Wake up
So,
in hospital.
Yeah,
red card.
No, not in the hospital. You wake up really quickly. There's a lot of safety in freediving. Yeah. So,
well, like you said, a lot of people ask you about the safety. Then,
right.
I mean, because it is an extreme sport. This.
Right. It is. But we have a lot of safeties here and a great medical team, and for every competition you have to have that in place because it's our lives that we're trusting these guys with. So.
Yeah. And I must say the safeties were incredible because they were diving down to 20 meters to then swim up with the diver in that like blackout zone.
Right.
And they were doing that every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And
the safety divers have a really difficult job because they rotate out who's going deeper and who's going shallower. But they're on everybody's dive, and they're going sometimes even to 25, 30 meters depending on how deep a person is going.
Yeah. Can you give us an idea of the culture that's around this? Because I've noticed some little quirks, like people sort of hiding their tag and then producing it with a flourish and doing all these weird things.
No, it's just everybody's having a lot of fun, I think. Like, usually a lot of people will, when they grab their tag, they'll put it's Velcro, so they'll put it on the other piece of Velcro that they'll have like pasted to their leg. I tuck mine in my neck or like in my sleeve or something. But yeah, it's always funny because when you come up, you do your service protocol, and the judges are like, "Do you have a tag?" And you're like, "Woo!" You pull it out of your like wrist, or you pull it out of your neck, or
I would pull it out from behind the judge's ear.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, that'd be good. Be like, "Oh, look what I found." Yeah.
And I noticed like when you're out of the water, like, you guys are a pretty healthy bunch. Like, it's not like skiing or scuba diving where they're smoking and drinking as soon as they finish the day.
Yeah. Well, at least one beer is always good to have, like, for rehydration purposes.
I know, you guys all justify it on health benefits. Like, there was a guy drinking a beer yesterday and you're just like, good on you.
Yeah,
Bring your salts back
Well,
up.
it also depends, like, wherever you are. I mean, the Aussies, absolutely, like, it's party time all the time. I love going to the competitions there. It's so fun. But we usually wait, and the end party is always pretty fun because everybody's been really good for about a week. So the end party is pretty unreal. But yeah, freedivers are really healthy. Like, you don't see people smoking or right before their dive or anything like that. So.
And before we finish up, let's get an idea of who you are then, and what your background is. So you're from Hawaii.
So I'm actually from Maine, but I live
New York.
Super like East Coast. But now I live in Hawaii, and I've lived there for 7 years, and I probably will live there for the rest of my life. I travel a lot. I live in Kona, Hawaii when I'm home. I have a house there, and that's like the best training and depth area. It's super easy to get depth in Kona, like from a shore swim. So, you swim like 5 minutes and you're already at like 60, 70 meters.
And what sort of jobs have you had in Hawaii?
In Hawaii, I've been a geologist. For the 6 years, for 6 years, and then before that, I lived in Las Vegas, and for 5 years I was a geologist there as well. So,
all right, give us an idea of the difference in geology between Las Vegas and Hawaii.
The type of geology I did in Las Vegas was I did geotechnical work. So I did housing stuff. I did all the groundwork for building recommendations and what they needed to remove, soil they needed to remove and replace and all that. Before they built houses. The geology that I've done in Hawaii was actually working on a stormwater management program for the state. So I did all the mapping of the state highways for their water runoff into the ocean, because they're trying to get the pollution down to nothing at some point, because the stormwater runs right into the ocean. So
what's that involved? Is that got you now introducing catchment systems on?
Yeah, catchment. We monitor like so it's not sewage, it's just stormwater, but it's we monitor the manholes and inlets and everything, like the outfalls where the water goes out into the ocean. We monitor everything from pretty much when it rains all the way to the ocean, and just make sure nothing's broken or plugged, so it everything gets flooded. Or,
Especially on
yeah.
like a geologically active part of the world
Right.
like Hawaii. Do you
Right.
get a lot of movement in the earth itself? That
We do. We
changes
do get earthquakes. I mean, being from Maine, I never got earthquakes, but I've felt two pretty good sized ones in being in Hawaii. I mean, nothing destroying or anything. It doesn't destroy anything, but it's just you're sitting there and you're like, oh, okay,
like,
there's one. yeah. Pretty big, like like 4 point, almost a 5. But so you can definitely feel it shaking and things are moving around on the shelves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. And just before we'll finish up on this, but you've done one of my life dreams in that you've played with a lava flow.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Tell us about that, please.
Yeah. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I was living on Oahu, which is one of the islands. Now I live on Big Island, the main island of Hawaii, which is where the volcano
With
is.
Mauna Loa.
Yeah. So I was living on Oahu, and it was surface flowing. So I took the day off from work, called in sick, flew over to Big Island with a friend, and hiked out pretty much where we weren't supposed to be. Hiked out like 8 miles, and went and found the lava flow because it was, we just kind of followed where the smoke was. And it was just really oozing everywhere, and we were taking sticks and dipping in the sticks in the lava, and there was people out there roasting marshmallows.
Oh my God.
It was really interesting. It's not explosive, it's just kind of going slowly by you. The only thing you really have to watch out for is methane bursts, because as the lava goes over an old lava flow, there was vegetation trapped at some point.
Yeah.
So it builds up methane, and then when the new lava goes over, it can ignite the gas, and you don't want to be near that because it's just like
molten
boom.
rock sprayed everywhere.
Yeah, it's like hot lava, yeah. So,
You'll burn your marshmallows.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not ideal.
no good. Yeah.
Oh, well, all right. Well, thanks so much
Yeah, you're
for
welcome.
coming on the podcast.
It's awesome meeting you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and what's the future of the sport for you? Just
For me, I would like to get a world record in no fins at some point. I need to start training for that. I've taken the last 6 months off because I overdid it last fall.
Yeah.
So I would like to get a world record. I'd like to get a lot of national records for the U.S. In the pool and in depth. That's pretty much, and then traveling.
So
Traveling
it's
is
it's always changing, but what depth does that mean you have to go to?
So the no fins national world record right now is 72 meters. So I need to do 73 for it to count. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all the best.
yeah.
And thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that's it for another week. Next week, we have a singular task, and that is climbing Ecuador's highest mountain at the volcano Chimborazo. So, there's a lot to this. So, it's... when I'm uploading this, I just got off a bus after 39 hours of travel from Bogota down to south of Quito. And that was wearing and grueling, and I'm so keen to be in a room where I can sleep after being in a bus for that long. I think I found my limit. But anyway, if you like what you're listening to, make sure you subscribe on iTunes and leave a review, but make sure you like the Facebook pages. That's where all the pictures that will make some of this poorly explained stuff make so much more sense. So Ecuador next week, and then we'll be traveling with Chloe for the next 5 weeks, so that will be fantastic. Anyway, stick around.